So now that we've spoken about what child abuse is and we've got a better understanding of what that is, we've spoken about how do we report concerns of child protection. What we're going to look at now is the support that we've created to give to clubs and coaches and even staff. As part of this online module, the webinar, there's a whole heap of resources that again sit on the Tennis Australia website, and we can go through that later. And there's posters, there's a stack of information in there that at the end of the day is going to help people within their clubs or within their coaching business promote a real strong sense of we take child safeguarding in tennis seriously. There's a really good thing coming out of the resources as well, and this is really important for clubs, are checklists. And the checklists are really, it's like an internal risk assessment, and these are the things that you should be taking back to your committee meetings and going through. And when you see later what the checklists look like, at the end of the day, as you go through each question, any that you circle no, then that's probably something that at the next committee meeting you need to discuss. So I guess like while we're on the topic of committee meetings, you know, again to promote that sense of your club takes child safeguarding seriously, my advice and our unit's advice really is to make it a standing agenda item so that every meeting you're speaking about it. You're identifying, you know, are we moving in the right direction? Is there something that we haven't quite covered off yet? Where do we need to go to next? But there's some other questions as well, and here are some samples in terms of, you know, starting that rolling sort of risk assessment. So does your club have the member protection policy available to all? Yes or no? If you don't, how are you going to do that? My advice, don't print a hard copy and then distribute it that way, because whenever it's updated, then that version that you've printed out and given out to other committee members or members in the club, that's going to be redundant. So what most people have done is if they'll send out an email or if they've got a Facebook page, they'll put a direct link to the policy there, because that will always be the updated version. And it's important that the member protection policy is available to all, because apart from everyone within this presentation being bound by it, other people who may not be bound by it but entering our environment, I think it's good that they have an understanding of what sort of sits behind the scenes as well. Does your club have a code of behaviour for participants, parents, volunteers and staff? Does your club have a member protection information officer who is dedicated to ensuring the safety of children? So is there a person on the committee who can handle these concerns to then report to, you know, the necessary member association or directly to Reece or myself? It's important to try and get someone on a committee in that sort of role, but then to actually communicate that to your membership, so then when there are concerns, there's a point of contact at the club. So I still think it's important at a grassroots level, there does need to be a person at, say for example, a club in that position who can be that point of contact. And if your people know that, then straight away, if something does get reported, then in terms of managing the process later and how that information is managed, makes it so much easier. And if that person, for whatever reason, didn't feel comfortable in that position, then again, you need to think sort of a bit more outside the box and go, well, okay, I'm not really comfortable with that, I'm not sure what to do. Then you ring your state or territory MPIO. If for whatever reason they weren't available or they didn't know what to do, then they're going to probably contact us. And then if we don't know the answer, then we'll go and seek some advice as well, just to make sure we get the right answer to bring back. Has your club conducted screening of the club's committee members or service staff, contractors in accordance with the screening requirements? So again, part of the checklist is, again, you follow the bouncing ball, it's a checklist. Have we done this? Have we done that? Has that person obtained a working with children's check or equivalent in whatever state or territory you are? We're going to call that the baseline for volunteers. They need to have, everyone needs to have it. The National Police Check has been decided that it is not compulsory for volunteers. That's fine, but as a baseline, working with children check or the state equivalent And I think it's really important that every person on the committee of the club does that, because it shows them that leadership from the top, that we take this stuff seriously, as opposed to you might just have the president, secretary have one, but no one else does, because it's like, oh, we don't feel like we need to. It sends a much stronger message that the club takes this stuff seriously when every person gets a working with children check. And as I mentioned earlier, is it a regular discussion topic at your committee meetings? If it's not, start making it one. Start going through those checklists and saying, okay, we're doing this, but it looks like we've missed it there. And then that's what you're going to focus on going into the next meeting. Is your club prominently displaying the Tennis Australia, our commitment and our club's commitment posters? Later you're going to see some posters that are readily downloadable on the website if people wanted to use them now. But Tennis Australia is going to be sending out 3 posters to all clubs. They'll be laminated. They look great. The content's great. And we're highly encouraging people to stick these posters up in their clubs, because it's that real strong visual representation that, again, this sport is taking child safeguarding seriously. The YMCA do a really good job at this. If people have ever walked through the centre, a YMCA centre, and looked up on the walls, and you'll see a lot of posters making reference to, this is who I report a child safety concern to. As the YMCA, we take child safety seriously. The posters is going to reflect how we feel, how it's relevant to tennis. And they look great. And if you can imagine taking a step back to a person who may be entering that environment with the intent to do something unlawful or commit one of those child abuse related crimes, if they walked into a club and they saw these posters stuck up around the walls, they know that the people at this club take it seriously. They can see it in committee meeting minutes or similar, or it's up on the walls, things like that. It's really disruptive, and it's a good preventative measure, and it goes a long way, because that person walking into that environment, for them, be like, no, this would be too hard. This would be far too challenging. As opposed to if that same person walks into a club, there's no posters, it looks like it's a free-for-all out on the courts, there's little black spots everywhere, there's no real policies or guidelines, then that is going to be a high-risk environment, and then that person will take every opportunity to do what they can to commit that offence. So those posters, while some people may see the content and go, well, that seems a lot, visually it looks great and it will send a strong message, and it does its job if you stick it up in the right places. So sticking it up out the back near the garden shed really isn't going to offer much. You want that visual representation when people come into your clubs. So certainly as a parent, if I was taking my kids there, that's exactly what I'd want to see. Just a couple more. Does your club know who to report suspicions or allegations of child abuse to? So we've already just spoken about who to contact in your state or territory in terms of police, human services, child services. Does everyone in your club know who to report to? How are you going to communicate that? Simple questions to ask. And lastly, do you feel if an incident or suspicion of child abuse was to occur at your club, you could ensure that your obligations were met? Have you covered off on ABC? Have we contacted the right people that we're obliged to under the member protection policy? So going right back to the start, if you're not sure what those obligations are, that's where we're saying people really need to get an understanding of the member protection policy first, because then that goes a long way to saying, now I know my obligations, then the guidelines come out of the policy, and this is how we're going to bring it to life.